They kept asking why I changed, why I grew cold, why I stopped answering, why I walked away, as if they hadn't spent years feeding the fire they now fear. I used to explain myself. Every scar, every silence, every reason I stayed, I gave them my truth like it was a gift. But they treated it like clutter tossed aside, trampled, forgotten. I'd sit in rooms full of people and feel like I was screaming underwater, drowning in my own voice, trying to make them see me, hear me, understand me. But they didn't want the truth. They wanted comfort. They wanted the illusion that they were right. And I was the broken one. So I bent. I bled. I swallowed my storms just to keep their skies clear. And they called it peace. They called it love. But it was never love. It was convenience. They only cared when I was useful, when I was silent, when I played along with their narrative. So one day, I stopped. I stopped explaining why I was hurt, why I distanced myself, why I no longer smiled the way I used to. Because they never listened. They just waited for their turn to speak. So I let the silence speak for me. I let absence become my loudest answer. I let distance become the boundary they never thought I'd draw, and suddenly they noticed. Suddenly, the silence was too loud. Suddenly, they missed the version of me they destroyed. But it was too late. I had learned something powerful. That explanation is a form of begging. And I no longer beg. Not for love. Not for understanding. Not for respect. I stopped explaining because they were never trying to understand. They were trying to convince me I was wrong for feeling. Let that sink in. They gaslight the fire in my chest and called it drama. They ignored the fractures in my soul and called it overreacting. But I am done dimming the volume of my pain so they can stay comfortable. I walked away, not because I'm weak, but because I finally understood my worth. And the day I stopped explaining was the day I became dangerous. Because now, I owe them nothing. Not my words, not my time, not my truth. They had every chance to hear me when I whispered. Now let them feel me in the silence. Let them sit in the ruins they built with their indifference. Let them wonder. Let them ache. Let them regret. I am no longer a chapter in their story. I am the... And they expected noise when I left. Screaming. Begging. A final outburst to satisfy their pride. But I gave them nothing. Not a word. Not a whisper. Just silence. Sharp, still. Unforgiving. And that silence? It said more than my voice ever could, because silence doesn't explain, it doesn't offend, it doesn't plead for understanding. It just is, and it echoes louder than rage, deeper than sorrow, more terrifying than truth. They didn't notice. At first, they laughed. They moved on, told themselves I'd be back eventually, like I always was. But the days stretched, the calls stopped. The messages dried up and my absence became presence. The silence began to hum, then to hiss, then to scream, because the human mind fills in blanks. And where I left silence, their guilt crawled in, their fear, their memory. They heard their own words echo back at them. Every insult, every betrayal, every time they thought I was too weak to leave. It looped, again, and again, and again. Silence is a mirror. And when the noise is gone, they're left staring into the face of who they really are. And that reflection, it's hideous. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to break a thing. I just walked. And that silence, it followed them. Into their homes, into their dreams, into the places they thought I'd never reach. They hear me everywhere now, not in my voice, but in the lack of it. The silence I left behind didn't fade. It multiplied. It grew teeth. It sank in. And now, they can't unhear it. Let them try. Let them turn up the music. Let them drown in distraction. It won't matter, because the echo I left behind wasn't mine. It was theirs. And now it belongs to them forever. They didn't feel it at first. No. At first, they celebrated. They danced in the wreckage like they'd won a war. Smirking. laughing, mocking the silence I left behind. They mistook my absence for defeat, as if walking away meant surrender, as if silence meant weakness. But regret is patient. It doesn't arrive in explosions. It doesn't shout. It creeps in like smoke under a locked door. Slow, silent, suffocating. At first, they felt nothing, but days became nights, and the nights got longer, colder. And that's when it started, that ache in their chest, that emptiness they couldn't name. That was me. That was the echo of every word they never let me say, every apology they never offered, every time they rolled their eyes while I bled trying to be enough. Regret doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers my name when they're alone. It wraps around them when the room gets quiet. It lingers in the spaces where I used to stand. It poisons their pride and turns it into rot. They'll try to fight it. They'll try to drown it in distractions, in noise, in someone else's arms. But regret is loyal. It doesn't leave when they want it to. It feeds on silence. It thrives in the aftermath. And it burns. Oh, how it burns. Slow and merciless. See, pain fades, anger cools. But regret builds a home inside your bones. It nests in the back of your mind and waits forever. They thought I'd come back. They always do. But I did in single quotes. And now, every choice they made, every word they spat, it haunts them. Not because I screamed, but because I never looked back. That's the fire. Not my rage, not my revenge, but the realization that they lit the match and begged me to burn. And now they're the ones trapped in the flames. They wanted to win. They wanted control. They thought walking away was a loss. But regret taught them that some people are irreplaceable, that some silences are louder than screams, that some exits echo for a lifetime. And now they sit in the ruins, alone, watching the smoke rise, realizing too late that the fire they started, it never touched me, but it will never stop burning them. Let them regret, let them remember, let them feel the slow fire. That's what they earned. That's what they'll never escape. Not for a moment. Not for the rest of their miserable lives. They thought I could be replaced, like I was some spare part in their machine. A placeholder, a face they'd soon forget. They walked away like I was disposable. And when I left, they filled the space with noise, with distractions, with people who looked the part but never carried the weight. They called it moving on. I call it running scared. Because here's the truth they choke on when no one's looking. I was never just someone. I was the one, the light they never deserved, the shelter they set fire to. And now they sit in the ashes pretending they feel warmth. But nothing fits the way I did. No voice replaces mine. No soul burns like mine. They tried to patch the hole with paper ghosts. They tried to mimic the fire, but all they got was smoke. They laugh louder now, but the echo is empty. They surround themselves with people who clap on cue, not on demand. But deep down, they know they lost something they'll never find again. Because I wasn't a moment, I was a monument. They didn't lose company. They lost legacy. And now there's a void, a silence that screams louder than my presence ever did. And it grows every time they lie to themselves. Every time they reach for someone who can't touch them the way I did, with truth, with loyalty, with fire. They feel it. They feel me. Not in my presence, but in the brutal absence that followed. Let them chase replacements. Let them decorate the void. But deep down, they'll always know they had everything, and they threw it into the dark. And now the dark has grown teeth, and it remembers. They thought I'd fade, like smoke in the wind, like a whisper lost in a crowded room. They thought time would erase me, but memory doesn't work that way. See, time is a liar. It doesn't heal, it hides. And the things they buried, they don't rot. They linger. They wake up in the middle of the night, and there I am, not in the room, but in their mind, etched behind their eyelids, branded in the silence. They hear my voice in the stillness, not the voice I spoke with, but the one I left with. the one that said nothing, the one that walked away without a sound. And somehow, that silence screams louder than anything I ever said. They remember the look I gave them, the last one. Not full of rage. No, full of knowing. The look that said, I see you now. Not the mask. You. They flinch when they think about it. That final moment, when I didn't beg, when I didn't fight, when I simply left. And now the memory plays on repeat. The way I stood, tall when they expected me to fall. The way I smiled when they twisted the knife. The way I said nothing and meant everything. They can't scrub me out. They tried, with distractions, with noise, with new faces. But I show up anyway, in mirrors, in dreams. In every moment they question what they lost. I'm there, because I was the truth. And truth doesn't die, it haunts. Let them try to forget. Let them scream into pillows, hoping I vanish. Let them tell themselves I never mattered. But memory doesn't lie. And memory has a name. Mine. I am the ghost they made. And I promise you, they'll never sleep soundly again. They loved the show. They loved the noise, the lights, the chaos, the version of me that danced for their approval. That bled for their applause. That shattered myself just to make them smile. They cheered when I broke. They clapped when I fell. And I mistook it for love. I mistook it for worth. But the truth, they never saw me. Only the mask I wore to survive their expectations. Only the performance, never the pain. And then I stopped performing. The spotlight went dark. The curtain dropped. And suddenly, their hands silent, still, absent. Because without my suffering to feed on, they lost interest. Without my pain to mock, they grew quiet. Without me pretending, there was no show left to sell. That's when it happens. That's when the world stops clapping. And oh, how loud the silence becomes. It rings in their ears. It suffocates their pride. It forces them to sit alone with the truth they spent years drowning in applause. You see, they never loved me. They loved the control. They loved the access. They loved what they could take, and who I had to become just to stay in the room. But now they watch from the outside, knocking on doors they once slammed in my face, reaching for pieces of me they shattered. They're confused, angry, desperate, because the show is over and I am no longer theirs to consume. Let that echo. Let it haunt them. Let them sit in the stillness they once forced me to endure. No more standing ovations. No more encores. No more pretending I needed their validation to breathe. I was never meant to be clapped for. I was meant to be feared in silence, respected in absence, and remembered without forgiveness. So let the world stop clapping, because I've stopped performing. And this is who I truly am. Not their puppet, not their show, but the storm they should have never underestimated. And now they sit in the dark, wondering why the applause will never come back. They don't fear losing me. They fear facing who they were when they had me, because the truth is ugly. And mirrors don't lie. They told themselves I was the problem. Too intense, too loyal, too much. But the reflection doesn't flinch, and now it stares back at them. Look closely. That's not me in the mirror. That's them, every lie, every betrayal, every silent moment when I needed them to speak. That's not the monster I became. That's the coward they always were. They wear masks so well, they started believing them. But masks crack, truth bleeds, and guilt clings. Like smoke in their lungs, like blood under their fingernails. They can't wash it off, they can't unsee it. Because the moment I walked away, the mirror turned inward. And what it showed wasn't a hero. It wasn't a victim. It was them, naked, exposed, unforgiven. They wanted me to be the villain. So I let them. Because villains don't flinch. Villains don't apologize. Villains survive. But deep down, they know. They know I was the one who stayed. I was the one who gave. I was the one who broke myself trying to carry what they threw away. Now they look in the mirror and see what they let rot, what they pushed away. what they will never touch again, and it haunts them, not because I'm gone, but because I was never the enemy. They were. They stare at the mirror now and wonder, when did it all start to crack? Was it when they lied? Was it when they laughed? Was it when they watched me drown and turned their backs? They don't get to ask that question. They forfeited their answers the moment they silenced my truth. The mirror doesn't care about their excuses. It doesn't care about their shame. It only shows one thing, themselves. Not the version they posted. Not the version they fed to strangers. Not the story they rehearsed to sleep at night. Just the truth, the raw, unfiltered, unforgiving truth, and now they look and flinch. They flinch because they know. I never needed revenge. The mirror is doing it for me. Let it keep showing them. Let it echo every word they denied. Let it reflect every scar they mocked. They'll never break it, because it's not glass. It's consequence, and it always stares back. They thought I would stand at the gates, begging for their approval, crawling back to the comfort of crumbs, pleading for entry like I ever needed their permission to exist. But I didn't return. I rebuilt. While they watched for my shadow in the ruins, I carved my name into stone. Brick by bit of brick, I rose, and when the dust cleared, what stood in my place was no longer what they remembered. They stand outside now, desperate, dazed, trying to find the version of me they broke. But that version is gone, buried beneath every lie they told, every betrayal they whispered behind gritted teeth, every time they smiled while stabbing. This kingdom, they don't belong here. Not anymore. They burned their way out. Let them freeze. I gave them warmth. They mocked the fire. Now let them shiver in the frost of my silence. They knock. They plead. They dress their regret in sweet apologies. But I know better. I learned the language of liars the hard way. I see. Through the masks, I hear the tremble in their voice. They don't miss me, they miss control. And that's gone now. Ripped from their hands like the throne they never earned. They watch me ascend from the outside, mouths dry, eyes hollow. Because this kingdom, this power, this peace, this me, it is no longer theirs to touch. Let them rot in the halls they abandoned. Let them choke on the silence they once weaponized. Let them realize they didn't exile me. I left, and I locked the gate behind me. Not to keep myself in, but to keep them out. So now they linger, ghosts without a kingdom, souls without a savior. And I sit on the throne they said I'd never reach. Unbothered, unmoved, untouched. I became the fortress, I became the storm, and they are just echoes, knocking on a door that no longer answers. They pointed at me with trembling hands and called me the monster, but they never asked who built the cage, who welded the chains, who fed the fire. I didn't crawl out of darkness. They dragged me into it and left me there to rot. They thought silence would kill me, but silence is where I sharpened my teeth. They thought abandonment would break me, but I grew fangs in their absence. You see, I wasn't born this way. I was made up piece by piece, lie by lie, cut by cut. They broke something they thought was disposable, and now they flinch when it breathes. Let them fear what they created. Let them sleep with one eye open. Let them wonder when the shadow returns, because I'm not coming back for revenge. I'm coming back as a reminder of every cruel word they laughed through, every apology they never gave, every time they turned their backs and thought I'd stay behind. But I didn't stay. I didn't beg. I became, they thought, I'd disappear. But I became the thing they can't erase. I am not their closure. I am not their healing. I am their echo, their storm, their punishment in flesh. They built a monster, and now it walks without chains. They stitched scars into my skin, and now every mark is a sigil of power. They buried me beneath doubt, but I grew roots in the dark, roots of wrath, roots of will, roots that cracked the surface. And now they tremble at what's risen. They said I was too much, too intense, too cold. And now I am everything they feared and worse. Because now, I know what I am. I'm no longer asking who I need to be. I am not their friend, not their savior, not their second chance. I am consequence. Let the word echo in their ears. Let it rot in their mouths. Consequence. I don't need justice. I am the justice they'll never outrun. I don't need closure. I am the door that slams shut forever. This isn't about vengeance. This is about recognition. They didn't destroy me, they revealed me. So call me a monster. Scream it if it helps you sleep. But remember, you built this. You gave it breath. You gave it purpose. You gave it hunger. And now it remembers every face, every lie, every smirk. I am not broken. I am reborn. And I don't come in peace. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Let them lie to themselves in the dark. But let them choke on my name. Because I didn't vanish. I evolved. They thought silence meant surrender. That absence meant defeat. But I was never gone. I was becoming something they could no longer control. They turned my back into a battlefield, stabbed it, branded it, and smiled as they walked away. But now every scar they left glows like fire, and every step I take echoes louder than their entire existence. They wanted me erased, but I carved myself into memory. Unforgiving, unforgettable. I am not the past, I am the price. Let them taste the bitter air when they say my name. Let their mouths dry, let their voices crack. Let them pause mid-sentence, hoping no one heard it. I was not a mistake. I was the warning they ignored, the storm they mocked until it swallowed them whole. They called me too much, too cold, too hard, too distant. But it was never me that changed. It was them who shrunk. They couldn't reach me, so they tried to bury me. And now they dig through ruins, hoping to find pieces of the version they destroyed. But I left no pieces. I left no way back. Let them regret. Let them ache. Let them scroll, stalk, and spiral. Let them sit with the silence that used to be filled by me. Because when I walked away, I didn't just leave. I took the light, the loyalty, the fire. Now all they have is smoke, and the ash of what they'll never have again. They thought I'd break, but I became something unbreakable. They thought I'd beg, but I built my own throne in the shadows. They thought I'd fade, but I branded my essence into their memory so deep, they can't breathe without inhaling my legacy. I don't need revenge. I became the consequence. So let them hear it. Louder, sharper. Let it pierce their comfort like a scream in a silent room. My name. Say it, and watch the truth you tried to bury rise like fire behind your eyes. Let them lie to the world, but never again to themselves. Let them choke on the syllables, on the shame, on the shadow of what they lost. Let them choke on my name. And no, I never needed them to remember me kindly, only completely, eternally, violently. Because now, I am not just the one who walked away. I am the one they'll never outrun. Let them hate. Let them mourn. Let them rot. But let them never ever forget. I was the lesson, and I was the last one they'll ever survive.